Hey everybody, welcome into Sports 5 in the 215. Today we have a very special guest, Matt Breen of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Matt, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Connor. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
Of course. I'll start you off with a really easy question. Who was your favorite athlete you've ever interviewed?
Um, that's you said easy. That's not easy.
Ah, shoot.
No, but I would say probably the people that I grew up as a fan of, like when I was a kid, and then you do this job and you talk to a ton of people, and then kind of becomes normal, and then sometimes you step back and say, like, wow, like when I was in, just becoming a Phillies fan in kindergarten, I was a big fan of Pete Incaviglia and the '93 Phillies. And then I am, on the phone with Pete Incaviglia for an hour on a Sunday. And it's like, what if I went back and, told my 5-year-old self that was going to be what I was doing? Or Chase Utley, like, now it's a job and you're talking to Chase Utley. But, when I was in high school and, that 2007 banner behind you, like that was all I cared about. So to be on the phone with Chase Utley and Ryan Howard and Cole Hamels, and it's like, now it's normal and you're doing a job, but I mean, there's still a part of me that can remember what that felt like as a kid to, idolize these people and to then to be able to do this job and do that, it makes it, that much more special.
My favorite Philly of all time was Ryan Howard. So to see you kind of have the same memories with Pete Incaviglia is really cool. What about Pete Incaviglia really stood out to you?
Yeah, I don't know why. It might have been his name. You think about like why you, especially as a kid, when I loved the Phillies when I was in kindergarten, but I don't know if I really like understood baseball. It was more of just like, how I spent time with my dad, and I loved going to games, but I don't think I was like breaking down, swings and knew what made a good baseball player. But Peter Caviglia, he looked like a baseball player, like this big guy with a mullet, and he had a cool name and a nickname, Inky, and it just is like, because he at the end of the phone call with him, I had to tell him, I'm like, obviously you play it straight the whole time, asking questions and stuff. So I got to be honest with you. I said, when I was in kindergarten, you were my favorite player. And he goes, why? They had Lenny Dykstra and John Kruk and Darren Dalton, Kurt Schilling on that team, like big time players. And I said, I don't know. Like, it's the same question you asked. I don't know. And I think that's the beauty about sports is that there's so many different ways to like connect with teams and players and things. And we love we love different things about sports. Like there's just like, I mean, we love breaking down plays and stuff, but you also love like random stuff. Like, again, I look at that 07 banner and 08, they won Phillies on the World Series. But for me, like 07 was the really like winning the World Series, because I never imagined from kindergarten until my freshman year of college, the Phillies didn't make the playoffs. I never thought the Phillies would make the playoffs. It just was like, just like the Eagles would never win a Super Bowl. I just kind of accept it. So when they won the division in 07, it was like, that was like winning the World Series. So it's like, I don't know. There's different things pull us to different people and moments and players. And I think that's what makes sports so great.
Yep. So sorry to if I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
no.
What this will probably make you feel really old. In 2007, I was in kindergarten.
Thank you.
From ages 5 to like 9, all I knew was the Phillies being a winner.
Yeah, you got spoiled. See, I remember that. It was like with the Eagles, because the Eagles sucked until like high school, like late grade school. They started the NFC Championship run through high school, so like 7th grade. And I remember my brother, who's older, being like, those kids. And he's talking. We were in like 8th grade, 7th grade. It's like, those kids are so spoiled now that are like first graders. They're going to think the Eagles were always good, So it's like, it does come in waves where you grew up, you thinking the Phillies were always good, and I grew up growing up thinking the Phillies were always terrible, but we still loved them.
Yeah, for sure. Hold on, let me pull my question back up. Explain to those who don't know the impact your dad had on your love of sports as well as your career.
Yeah, that's what we did. Like we loved. My dad loves sports. I don't know if he really likes anything else. He's not a big music guy. He doesn't read books. He loves sports, and he loves the Phillies and the Eagles and the Sixers and the Flyers, and that's what we did as kids. We growing up, we everything revolved around, and he coached all of our teams. So like everything was sports, and everything was going to the ballpark and going to the vet and sitting up top in the 700 level. Like I didn't know anything else. That's where we sat, and that's where we belonged. Like I didn't want to sit anywhere else. That was where we wanted to be. We brought our own food in. We parked for free on the street, and he just taught us to love sports. Like he loved. Like I remember when the Flyers, the Legion of Doom, when you weren't even born yet, and you're making me feel old. But I remember him. He would get us into it, like getting me and my brother worked up and like into sports. And I thought of this last year, and I was like, did I like sports as a kid, or did I just love my dad so much that I wanted to? That was how we spent time with sports. And I think there's a little bit of that. And I don't know. I don't think I would become like, if my dad was into art or something, I don't know if I would become a sports writer. Like I don't know. Like I think that was a huge reason of my love of sports is because we spent so much time together. And then and he always brought home the newspaper, which again, you're too young, you don't remember a newspaper.
I do.
All right. But he would bring home the Daily News every day from work, and like to now, like I guess like that was the internet before the internet. Like you didn't know, you couldn't see standings anywhere. You couldn't see photos of people. Like so I even in kindergarten, I would read, I wasn't reading the newspaper, but I would page through it to look at the photos of the players, to look at the standings, to see this day in sports, and like to read like little things that I could read as a, kindergarten, first grade. And he would bring it home every day from work. And then, so that he gave me that love of sports, introduced me to newspapers. And then obviously in, high school is when I realized like I'm not going to play for the Phillies because I can't, come off the bench for my CYO baseball team. So I got to figure something else out here. And I loved sports. I loved newspapers. My mom would take me to 7-Eleven or Wawa every day, and we'd get the Inquirer, the Daily News, and read that. And then, one thing led to another. I was a paper boy. I just love, like, I remember that as a kid, like I was obviously, him, Bobby Cullen, he was a paper boy, Daily Newspaper boy. And then he gave his route to his brother. His brother gave his route to me, and we were like the last Daily Newspaper boys until they stopped it. And there was just such a rush of going. They would get the papers delivered to their house, and it'd be a stack on their doorstep. And I was like such obsessed with sports and obsessed with like newspapers that would be such a rush every day to see what was on the back page of the Daily News. And we would all kind of hang around and look at the paper together. And I think all these things that, these people that I was around as a kid all had this shared love of sports, and it's all led me to where I am to to have that love of sports. Like all my friends, like everyone I grew up with, everyone I've ever been friends with, again, like they're not, that's just we talk about, we just like sports. I don't know, it's like, and not trying to like dumb it down or simplify it, but that's like everyone's number one thing in their life is sports. And all the guys I grew up with, like that's just like you do, like you love sports. So it's always been like that for me, from my dad to my friends to, my neighbors, everybody. So then it kind of just naturally, I don't know what else I would do, because I don't really, again, I like music, I guess, but I don't really, I just love sports just like you do.
Yeah. Real quick story and real quick, shout out to all the sports dads out there. You guys form the young minds of the next generation, and we appreciate it. But when I was like 4 or 5, and I would watch the Phillies. Whenever Ryan Howard would come up to the plate, he would always he'd always spit in his hands and like wash them,
Yeah.
and I would do it just to kind of be like my favorite player, because obviously I have cerebral palsy. I like can't walk and stuff, so like just doing little things like that really kind of helped me get closer to the game and really like appreciate it.
For sure. The way he like used to remember, he'd like get his bat and he would have that big donut on his bat and he would slam it into the ground and then he
Yeah,
would walk. It was just like the coolest. And like you just notice things like that. And I was like, he just had such a cool like swagger. And like, of course, like he's going to hit a 500-foot home run because he just like owns it from the time he walks on the on deck circle to the plate. He just looked like he was so cool. And like, I don't know, not everybody has that style, and he definitely had it, spitting in his hands. I remember the thing, and that's the things about sports. Like you love this, yeah, we loved Ryan Howard for what he did, but you also loved him for you remember him spitting in his hands.
yeah, and like just those little moments, like I truly believe, had he not gotten hurt in 2011, first ballot Hall of Famer,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And
500 home runs probably.
it's just sad to see how that career ended. His career ended. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, you were wrong. I was just saying he probably would have hit 500 home runs if he doesn't have that injury. It's definitely a great like what if in Philadelphia sports history to not only him, but how does that era of Phillies baseball change if he stays healthy? And because I think people, I don't want to speak for other people, but I feel like we've forgotten how good he was in that short amount of time and how feared of a hitter he was and how much of a game change in that bat he could have every night. So it's a shame that if he stays healthy and has 4 more productive years, he's remembered a lot different, like you said, and he probably is has the numbers to become a Hall of Famer.
For sure. And for my money, he is the most dominant hitter that did not use steroids.
Yeah, it's just hard. We don't know. I'm not saying he took steroids. I'm just saying that we don't know who did and who didn't. So like, I don't know. The steroid debate is, and now I'm voting on the Hall of Fame for the first time this month, and it's a really exciting honor. But then like the more I think about it is like, how do you address the steroid stuff? Because, and I know everyone's kind of talked about this that has to vote, but like, I don't know who did and who didn't. And like, is it my job to determine that or to penalize that when they're on the ballot? So like to me, Manny Ramirez, and this is getting off subject, but like Manny Ramirez is a Hall of Famer. Like,
oh my God, absolutely. Right.
But he also was suspended for steroids. So it's like, I don't know. It's just like a weird spot to be in that you're like, that we have to even address. Like, it's going to be nice, like, hopefully, right, that there's no more steroids, I would think, in baseball. Yeah. But like, like this next era, like that's not something we have to keep thinking about. Did this guy take him? I don't know. He might have. He might not have.
Yeah. For sure. And this next question is gonna ask a little more about you. I'm just wondering, how did you get your foot in the door in the sports journalism field?
Yeah, it's random, but I went to Archbishop Bryan High School, which is in Northeast Philly, and yep. I was a senior. I was getting done my senior year. I was going to go to Temple to study journalism, and a friend of mine pumped gas at a gas station in like the one neighborhood, and one of his people that he pumped gas for was like worked at the Inquirer, and he's like, and they were looking for like not interns, but people that could answer phones in the high school sports department, and on Friday nights, and they used to cover high schools, and the coaches called in the games, and someone would have to answer the phone, gather the information, write down the stats, and then they would pass that on, and someone would write that up for the next day's newspaper. So he's like, well, my buddy is, a big sports guy, and he's going to Temple. He'd like to do it, I'm sure. So he put me in touch, and this woman passed me on to the person who ran this department, this guy named Doug Haddon, he launched the careers of like tons of Philadelphia sports writers have went through his, like, that was their gateway, was this score service thing, which I didn't know was a thing until I got there. And so I started doing score service September of 2007, my freshman year in college, your first month of kindergarten.
Yep.
And that was, to me, I was like, I remember I took the subway down to Temple to Broad Spring Garden, and the Inquirer at the time was in this beautiful white building that's still there. It's police headquarters now, but I remember getting off the steps and like looking up at it. It was down Broad Street, and you could see it, and I was like, oh my God, like my stomach dropped. I was like, this is so cool. Like, if that was it, like I would have been set. Like that was like all I needed to do was work one shift. And I did that, and I did that for a while, a couple years in college. It was good. It was a good job, good college job. He paid well for a college kid. And also it got me in the face of these editors. Lou Rubito was the high school editor, and John Quinn was the sports editor. And I got to see them, a couple times a week and be able to say hi to them and get to know them. And then they needed someone to cover a softball playoff game, high school softball game. And they were like, isn't that like that kid in the back? Like, doesn't he go to Temple for journalism? And I kind of was like one foot out the door of journalism at this point because I was just afraid of like job security and stuff. So I wasn't really pursuing it. But then they called me and they're like, can you cover this game? And I was like, yeah, I can do it. So next thing you know, it was an internship with the Inquirer, we're writing, and then an internship with the Washington Post. And then I came home at the end of the internship with the Washington Post to take a full-time job in 2012 with the Inquirer, and been there since.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's how I got started. And it was you're in the right place at the right time, and you meet the right people, and people look out for you, and you just it's lucky, but it's also like then you take advantage of the opportunities, and that's what kind of happened.
I bet. And at that point, this is the last serious question, and then I have like one more fun question. At that point, were you worried that like those people that were secure in their job would kind of big league you? Like, who the hell is this college kid?
You know what? Honestly, so again, I am a kid from Philly who grew up reading these newspapers, watching Daily News Live. Like these were like these people and I knew all these names, and they were like, to me, like larger than life. Like, so I remember Todd Zalecki, who now is a good friend of mine, was covering the Phillies for the Inquirer. And like, to me, like cover the Phillies for the Inquirer, like you didn't get bigger than that. I was such a dream of mine to do that job. And he came in the office one day on a Saturday, and I was there for score service, answering phones, writing down little notes to give to someone else to write. I wouldn't even write it. I would just gather the information, and then they would write a little blurb in the paper based on what I was able to gather. And someone's like, knew that I was a huge Phillies fan. It was 2008, and they said, Todd, this is Matt Breen. And I got to meet him, and I got to talk to him for like 2 minutes, maybe ask him a question or something. And he couldn't have been nicer. And he doesn't even remember it now. I'll tell him, because like we're friends. I'm like, dude, we met in like 2008. He's like, I have no idea what we're talking about. Bob Brookover, another, he was a Phillies columnist, and he came in the office straight from the airport one night with a suitcase and his luggage, and just seeing him and just being able to say, oh, hi, and introduce yourself. I sat at a boxing match next to Stan Hochman, which was like,
oh my God.
Yeah. It was like, this is like, I'm sitting next to him, I tell him who I am. And I knew I said he would cover the 64 Phillies. And that was always a team that kind of fascinated me. So I got to pick his brain about 64 Phillies. And then he's telling me how to watch him fight and like the things he's looking at and how he did it. This guy, covered Muhammad Ali. I've never, I'm not going to say never, like you get big time by people, but like that says more about them than me. Like there's been so many gracious, Jim Salisbury, who was again, like, someone you just like, you idolize as a kid. And, when you're trying to learn how to do this business. And I remember met him, my first training. I was like, oh my God, we're going out to Frenchie's the night before the first workout was the next day. I don't know anybody. Again, I was covering high school sports, and we go to this bar and like Jim's there and I get introduced, and right away it was like, couldn't have been nicer. And Jason Stark, who again is a Hall of Famer. I met him for spring training, and he's couldn't have been nicer. Jerry Krasnick was like, when I was in college, you read ESPN.com's baseball coverage, and he was like the man. And now he's texting me for his fantasy football advice. So Matt Gelb was a guy when I was in college, like I wanted to write like Matt Gelb, and I just would try all the time to write like him, and I would read his writing and study it. And now, one of my best friends, Kate Fagan, who was she covered the Sixers, and there's never been, like, since I've read newspapers, there's never been a better basketball writer in Philadelphia than Kate Fagan. She was so good. And just like you learned, she played college basketball at Colorado. It was like a big time basketball player. So she knew the game. Like, she really knew the game, and she would teach you stuff. Like, you would read it, and she had this thing on Sundays where she would break down plays. It was really, really cool stuff. And she's now like a big time author and stuff, but I sent her an email when I was an intern. I just wanted to, like, try to get better. And she sent me this super long email back, like critiquing my stories, things I still think about when I'm writing, little tips. And then just like, it was like motivation to like how nice and gracious these people were to me. And like, I hope I'm that way if I meet people, not that anybody's like fawning over me. Like I was fawning over, Jim Salisbury, but you just be respectful to people, just like so many people were that way to me.
Yeah. And Jim Salisbury's the GOAT. And
he is.
Just for my own information, is that the same Kate Fagan that works for ESPN?
Yeah, that's her. She's I don't think she's with ESPN anymore, but she's written, I think she's written 2 or 3 nonfiction books that have done well. She seems like I don't have contact with her, but like she seems like she's doing really well. But in like an alternate universe, because obviously she's had super success since she left the Inquirer, I would have loved to see what she would have done as like a traditional sports writer covering the Sixers, because you look back, like she was really just getting started, and I thought she was just so good at what she was doing here that obviously bigger and better things came her way. But selfishly, I wish she would have covered, the Sixers and Philadelphia sports for a little bit longer.
For sure. And it seems like she was a huge influence on you. And real quick, shout out to Kate Fagan, and then we'll get into our last question. And the last question I have for you today is, if there was any athlete, past or present, that you would want to interview, who would it be?
That's a great question. There's so many people. I guess I've been writing a lot about Dick Allen, and I'm sure that's like one on the top of my head. Obviously, I never had the chance to interview him. He died in 2021. No, or 2020. And he was he kind of shut down interviews the last, portion of his life, like when I was covering the Phillies and stuff. And
yeah,
but I've been able to, talk to so many people around him, and seems like such like an interesting, complex person. He would be on there. And then really, like, I just, anybody, I just enjoy, so many of these interview stories I get to do now in this job are like stories I want to do, and stories that I think of and I want to do them. So like when I interview people, it's not really an interview. More so, it's like a conversation of that. I'm like kind of selfishly asking questions that I want to know, and then I turn into a story, and it's like more of a conversation. So I enjoy talking to, really everybody I talk to. Dick Allen would be cool. Would have been a good one. Like I'm looking ahead at like a story. I mentioned the Legion of Doom earlier, like a Legion of Doom story in February, because it would be the, I guess the 30th anniversary of them, their first line together. And I think Eric Lindros as a kid was one of those larger than life people. So to talk to Eric Lindros now would be like the Pete Incaviglia deal, where you get to talk to these people that you as a kid, you looked up to so much. But really there's so many people that, you do this job and you get to do cool stories that really, and then you find out that even, I talked to a Pop Warner football coach last week, and that was a great interview and a great conversation. So it's like, you don't have to be Chase Utley to be impressive, right? Like I think we all have that capability that we live impressive lives, or that you have good stories to tell. And I think that's what that Pop Warner coach has just an impactful in his life that, the superstar coaches might be in their lives.
Yeah. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity. It means so much to me. And good luck with any future stories that you write. I'll be reading them, and I'll direct my viewers to read them as well.
Thanks a lot, Connor. I appreciate having me on, man. It was really good talking to you.
Yeah, good talking to you too. And have a great day and a great weekend.
You too. Thank you, Connor. Take care.
Of course.